So, somebody remade the Brandon Lee movie The Crow, and it was the studio Lionsgate. And in short, The Crow in this 2024 version has facial tattoos that reminded me of the Jared Leto Joker.
To this handsome honka.
And I don't approve. The Crow also now has a mullet haircut. The whole film came across to me as a pretty soulless affair that managed to create no emotion in me at all. Lots of people have been giving it bad reviews, and in short I agree with them. I also didn't find it to be very well written, and it does stand out as being one of the worst remakes or adaptations I've ever seen, because it bears almost no resemblance to either the 1994 film or the 1989 graphic novel. It stars Bill Skarsgård as Eric, and in the role of Shelley, it has something called an FKA Twigs. I don't know what an FKA Twigs is, but I don't think I approve of that either. The object known as FKA Twigs has 36 credits as an actress on IMDb, but they appear to be nearly all for music videos. I wouldn't go to the cinema to see this film. I wouldn't even pay to stream it if I were you. I wouldn't even watch it for free unless you're really bored. Just watch the 1994 Brandon Lee Crow instead. Give me a bit of time and I'll explain why. The 2024 Crow is listed on IMDb as an action, crime, fantasy, horror, romance, thriller and a superhero film from its tags. That's a lot, and for me, it isn't a very good version of any of them. It's allegedly a reboot of the 1994 film and supposedly an adaptation of the 1989 comic book series. And did they? Did they adapt that comic, or reboot the franchise, or remake the 1994 film? For me, the answer to all of those is no. This 2024 version of The Crow, based on the graphic novel, is so vastly different from either the 1994 film or the graphic novel that even calling it The Crow strikes me as being false advertising. You see, I have a long history with the Crow franchise, because the graphic novel that it's based on, I kind of have a copy of that sitting around. It's all very goth, and I can't help but wonder how much it contributed to my deep love of black leather. And if anything, Eric, the lead in it, bears a strong resemblance to the lead singer of the band Susie and the Banshees, and the graphic novel, I'd say, is still worth a look. There are versions of it available online. It's also on Amazon. It opens cold and finishes colder. It's horrible and in places for me quite beautiful. It's a simple story of a group of very bad guy gang members who get visited by a ghost from their past, a revenant out for revenge. He's looking for 5 men who go by the nicknames Tintin, Top Dollar, Tom Tom, Fun Boy and T-Bird, and that's the story. One by one, these men get a visitor, a man who they didn't think was alive, and he metes out justice and guides them to the afterlife. And interspersed with that is the man in black leather and a painted face, remembering his past and what was taken from him in a series of dreamlike scenes. It makes heavy use of symbolism and dream states, like in this vision. The man Eric sees a beautiful white horse tangled in barbed wire, and that's symbolic of the demise of his fiancée. We get the story of Eric and Shelley, a young couple very much in love and about to be married. Shelley is an angelic looking blonde girl in the graphic novel. This is Shelley, I repeat again, being played in the 2024 version by some object called an FKA Twigs. Close to the end of the novel, we get the story of him and his fiancée Shelley broken down at the side of the road, a year before the main story happens. On a cold October night, on the way to their new house, a car goes by carrying 5 men. Tintin, Top Dollar, Tom Tom, Fun Boy and T-Bird, who take the lives of the young couple, just for fun, and take turns forcing themselves on Shelley. The book has a real aesthetic to it. The current day panels have a bit of a 2000 AD art style, like Judge Dredd, whereas the dream panels are mostly more impressionistic. The story is also interspersed with poetry and sometimes song lyrics. The ghost takes the men one by one and finally lures T-Bird, the man that took his life a year before, back to the same stretch of road where they were a year ago. T-Bird crashes his car, and that's how the story ends, with the ghost looming over T-Bird, ready to take his revenge, presumably very slowly with the hammer that he's holding. So on the strength of that, we got the 1994 movie with Brandon Lee, and it's a film that I have a lot of fondness for, and that's despite it making a raft of changes from the original story. I don't know why people adapting a story have to change it so much. If it was good enough to adapt, it was good enough surely to be kept true to the original story. But in the 1994 film, instead of just being random victims, the film rewrote Eric and Shelley being attacked in their home because they were fighting an eviction notice from a dodgy landlord. The main bad guy of the film is now Top Dollar, not T-Bird, but the general bones of the story stayed roughly the same, I guess. Granted, Top Dollar is now a crime lord instead of a thug. A lot of changes were made in the film compared to the graphic novel to make it more emotional, giving Eric a backstory with Sarah and Officer Albrecht. It also has a very memorable soundtrack, including the song Burn by The Cure, that I like, if anything, a bit too much. Some of the CGI also looks a bit wonky, but it was 1994. It also gets a happier ending than in the novel. Eric sets the world right in his eyes and then goes to be with Shelley in heaven. Eric is a lot more human in the 1994 film compared to the books. It's a film I'm very fond of, but not a film I watch often because it reminds me of the past too much and makes me far too sad. After what happened to Brandon Lee, it's a film with an air of tragedy about it. The film was also changed to finish with a kidnapping subplot involving Sarah and Albrecht and a sword fight on top of an abandoned church. And the end of the 1994 film was always the part of the movie I had the most problems with. It was the sword fight on top of the church, okay? It wasn't great for me. The film was also wildly miscast. Somehow, new characters got wrote in for Bai Ling and Tony Todd. Eric was being played by Brandon Lee, who was half Chinese, but F it, he captured the look well enough, and he added martial arts to the role. Shelley was not blonde like in the book, she was instead a Canadian Greek lady. Sarah's mother changed from being called Sandy to Darla for reasons. Somewhere in the adaptation, Officer Albrecht became black. They seem to fuse the characters Albrecht and Captain Hook from the book. Albrecht is now being played by Ernie Hudson, so I'm all for that, I guess. Because who doesn't like Ernie Hudson? He was Winston in Ghostbusters. The 1994 film has a collection of guys in it with fantastic voices. It has Tony Todd from Candyman, Ernie Hudson, Michael Wincott, and what? No James Earl Jones. So in some ways, I love the 1994 film, but I always kind of hoped for a remake that was closer to the graphic novel the films are supposed to be based on. Then yesterday, I watched the new 2024 version, and it's all new FKA Twigs, and I still don't know what that is.
What is it?
She's playing Shelley in this version, and Shelley gets in trouble in this story because she has a video of a rich bad guy she works for who sold his soul to the devil in return for eternal life, and can whisper in people's ears and get them to off themselves, and this is how he preserves his life over time. To save herself, Shelley gets herself arrested, and due to the contents of her handbag, ends up in rehab where she meets Eric. They get feelings for each other, so when the rich bad guys people turn up looking for Shelley, Eric breaks her out and they have a grubby whirlwind romance squatting in one of her friends' houses. The bad guys catch up with them, do them in, then Eric comes back in some kind of interdimensional train station, then gets sent back to Earth to enact revenge. Blows it repeatedly, loads of innocent people get hurt, he ends up slaughtering a load of bodyguards who weren't even involved in what happened. The guy who sold his soul convinces Twig's mum to throw herself out of a window, then leaves and walks under the window she was throwing herself out of. I think someone was trying to be clever. They wanted the bad guy walking away nonchalantly while she hit the pavement in the background, but it just ended up as really stupid for me because he was seconds away from getting himself squashed. Eric finally ends up face to face with the rich bad guy at the end and asks him, "Who are you?" That's something like 90 minutes into the movie. What is supposed to be the grand showdown with the big bad guy and the hero doesn't even know who he is. It kind of takes all the power out of the scene. For getting rid of the guy who sold his soul and sending him to hell, Shelley gets brought back to life and Eric goes to hell, so we didn't even get a happy ending. Then we cut to a scene of Shelley being resuscitated at the end, on a floor where I think they got done in earlier. and I'm not sure if the main story is even supposed to have happened or not, or whether it's supposed to have been a vision that happened in her head. The story is so badly executed, I'm genuinely not even sure what they were going for. The movie finished and I found myself thinking, what the hell was that? How was that an adaptation or a reboot of The Crow in any way? The story I just watched bears almost no resemblance to either the 1994 movie or the graphic novel. They just took the name and used it. How is this supposed to be an adaptation of the graphic novel at all? The 2024 film kept the names of 10 or 15 characters from the graphic novel, and one of the 2 they kept wasn't supposed to be alive in the story. It's still about revenge and that's about it, but where's Tintin, Top Dollar, T-Bird, Fun Boy? Oh, and the symbolic scene with the horse and the barbed wire. Yeah, they put that into the 2024 movie as a memory that Eric had as a child, which suggests to me that they didn't understand either the graphic novel or the concept of symbolism. So for years, I kind of wanted a remake in the hope we'd get something more faithful to the book, and I got a remake that was a lot less faithful if anything. And well, it appears Top Dollar himself has something to tell me.
Be careful what you ask for.
They get it. I know. Of course!
If you only knew the power of one, the power of two, the power of many.